absolutely have to go get a PhD. And you absolutely have to go and join that up-and-coming statistics department at Carnegie Mellon University with its terrific young chairman, Steve Kleinberg. As it so happened, Steve was not my dissertation advisor. Nevertheless, took the log linear model discrete analysis class about this book here, It's Seen Better Days, that he wrote with Yvonne Bishop, Paul Holland, and the help of his mentor, Fred Mossler. But it's not until I was already working at the Bureau for a couple of years that I realized how profound Steve's influence was on me and also on my colleague that I was working with. And today I realize that it's fair to say that Steve had a tremendous influence on applied statisticians, an entire generation of them, and especially government statisticians. When I say government, I mean the entire government statistical community, just the government itself. I can only speak for what we do at the Census Bureau that is relevant, and then we use some of the linear model theory, record linkage under the direction of Bill Winkler for many years now. Donna Spanish and Bill Griffin designed a system to do computation that actually took place in 2010 that was using log linear model. Right now, Tom Muley is leading a large project, and part of it is using log linear model to try to extract information from an administrative record. And let's not forget the latest rage, adaptive design. I have an employee, Chandra, who's looking at using log linear model to do adaptive design. And those are only projects that Steve is not directly involved in. So I think I can speak for all my colleagues and tell you, thank you very much.
Any other questions or comments from the audience?
I think some people are lacking their grade pills today. We'll see.
Could you give us your name, please?
Yes. Oh. Wow. Let's see if I hold it back here. That works. My name is Patrick Joyce. I work for the Census Bureau at the Center for Research and Statistical Methodology. Here we go. I'll refer to my phone because that's where I wrote down half of the things I wanted to kind of get to. Don't worry. I know that we're admitting the fact that we're in an era of mass data generation, a lot of information flying back and forth. The big issue, though, is at the end of the day, said information has to be reconciled. A lot of ways we've been trying to do it, obviously, probabilistic models and the rest. And the other issue is that we're not a small country by any means. And so it seems like while there's been a lot of work already done, there is a lot of work to be done. And my general concern is that who picks up that mantle? The Census Bureau has some resources, but clearly is not at the level it was back during UNIVAC 1. And while we certainly would like to have those resources and those capabilities, it seems to me that something needs to change in order to step that up. So I suppose I'll cut it short there by kind of saying, well, how do we get there? How do we get from where we are now to to having these models and having the ability to crunch out all this data, to be able to reconcile all the possible information and errors? How do we get there?
Can people hear me? No, we're not on. All right, I'll get closer, better. You have to start somewhere. One of the problems, I've now watched
6 censuses. In the US, we only do them every decade, and so we can't get as many in as I've been getting. And the excuse for not pursuing very new and very different avenues is always the complexity and the need to always have the prior system in place for the next time. And I think people have to do things very differently all of the time if we're going to make any progress on this agenda. I'd like to point back to 1970. In the middle of non-response follow-up, the Census Bureau realized it was not going to be able to complete it by doing a full enumeration. And so they put into place, in real time, 2 new samples in order to gather information, in order to complete the process. They were never evaluated, but they were willing at that time to actually institute something new and in the field, which could have been tested decades ago. And so I love Ivan's suggestions. We can capture every data element today. And we could store it, and we can put it in files. And so the notion that you could run simulations and experiments with alternate things as you go along is now doable by my undergraduates. Bill and I supervise undergraduates who, if you turn them loose, would run any data set in any environment. And those are the kinds of people that the Census Bureau needs to have working for, doing some of these activities. They are the future, but the future is now.
Since this is the Morris Hansen lecture, I should add that one of the major contributions of Morris and his colleagues at the time was that in each census they built in a prototype of what often became the next census. And so they tried out in real time, in the actual census taking process, the wave of the future. Self-enumeration was a major innovation. It was tried out on a sample basis, not a random sample basis, but in a designated part of the country. I think in the 1960 census. And so was mail in and mail out, mail out and mail back. I'm not sure which census, but I know it was on a trial basis. It worked, it was evaluated, it was refined, and then it was used as the major device for the next census. So that kind of experimental approach is something that we can take away from Morris Hansen and his legacy. It's well worth it. I would just add, parenthetically, that I don't know how he got away with it with the Congress at the time, because it certainly introduced incompatibilities between the areas that were census taken by the new method and the area and all the rest of the country, which was still using the old method. But it was accepted, and the results were good enough, in fact better, but different. And they were carried forward into the next census.
So we have time for one more question, please.
Thank you for the wonderful talks and discussions. Part of what I'm concerned about, having worked for the Federal Statistical Society, O'Brien, U.S. Energy Information Administration, is the emphasis on records and those other sources of data, lose sight of the fact that the descendant census is participatory, it's transparent, it's public engagement, and there are few opportunities for the public to interact with its government other than this census every 10 years. And what do we lose by not engaging them through the front door by asking people to participate in the census? We see what's happening with the NSA approach, for example.
One of my mentors was Bill Kruskal at the University of Chicago. And Bill always made exactly that point, that the census as public ceremony was an essential element of the census that he did. It isn't clear that that's the census we have today. And so I don't know how you reclaim that. And I don't know whether or not it was a reflection of the reality. It's a little hard to know. It is clear to me that gaining public engagement in some form will be critical if we're to go in the direction that I suggested. So I think that that notion is clearly embodied in the kinds of changes that I have in mind. That requires more than statistical work with the Census Bureau. That requires a very different kind of outreach and involvement in ways that I think that Bob and others in the past have tried. It's just not easy.
All right, I think our time is up, and in a moment I'm going to hand you back to Mark, who's going to remind us of how we get from here to there. I'd like